Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a prolific writer. He writes for Miles Franklin, the Precious Metals People. He's published all over the internet, well, at least all over the internet where it matters. Lots of people think a lot about what he says, including me. I'm talking about Bill Holter. Bill Holter, thank you for being on USA Watchdog today from Texas.
Thanks for having me on again, Greg.
Your latest article talks about the geopolitical, which is a huge wild card that could crash the system. Actually, I think you said it will crash the system. Let's start with little old Greece. Greece, you know, the party that got put in power, the communists, the rip-off artists in that government weren't even capitalists; they were crony fraudsters. And they made communism look good, but their platform, one of their basic things in their platform is no more austerity. We're going to not pay this debt back. And isn't that going to make a mess of things when, you know, Italy and Spain and Portugal and Ireland all say, yeah, we'd like to have our debt cut too. I mean, isn't the euro over? Isn't this done?
Well, it certainly opens the door. If Greece gets a haircut, it opens the door for Italy, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, etc. It does open a door. The first thing that you have to understand is Greece is broke. Greece has already spent that money that they borrowed. They can't pay it back. So, in essence, what this is about not calling a spade a spade. This is about the West not admitting that the derivatives chain is broken. They can hide it, they can not call it a haircut, and they can replace it with new bonds. There's already been in the last 24 hours 2 flip-flops. There were reports out of Greece that they were softening, and then their financial minister came back on and said, no, we're not softening. We've heard reports out of Germany that it's unacceptable. The bottom line is they owe money at the beginning of March, and they don't have the money to pay it back. So either the West gives them money to pay them back, or Greece defaults.
Isn't this, when you say they've already lost the money, and we only have 30 days for some soul search, I mean, who's going to come up with this money over, and this isn't all their debt, this is just like a car payment. I mean,
Right.
this is just a payment. So, you know, who's going to print the money? The Fed, the ECB? I mean, and isn't all this about really these banks are insolvent? I mean, the real problem is the banks and probably the governments are insolvent in the Eurozone.
Well, the Greek banks have already had a 10% run on their deposit base last month. I think they lost, $15 billion or something were withdrawn. So the Greek banks are already shaken. And yes, many European banks do own Greek debt. Many Greek European banks have written CDS, credit default swaps, on Greek debt. The Greek debt is only $300 billion. It's between $300 and $350 billion. Once CDS gets written on it, then you have speculators wanting to buy CDS, which is an insurance policy, if you will, against Greece going bankrupt. The problem is there's maybe 5 to 10 times the amount of CDS outstanding as there are Greek bonds.
So instead of having $350 billion, they leveraged this up to the max. They leveraged this up to what, $3 trillion?
Yeah, maybe 3 trillion, maybe 5 trillion.
Just Greece.
Yeah, just Greece. This is what they do. Speculators go in. It's like buying fire insurance on your next door neighbor's house and then wanting to see a fire burn it down. It's as simple as that. The speculators go in, they buy more CDS than there are Greek bonds, and then they hope, and if they can, help Greece default. And that's your break in the derivatives chain.
And what about piling on with a country the size of Italy? They're going to have trouble. They're going to want their debt cut. Spain's a basket case.
Right.
Ireland, I'm sure, has kept its mouth shut, but they start seeing people get big 50% haircuts. That's what they're talking about. And I think Greece can't pay any of it. That they're going to say, well, what are we doing? Well, why should we pay this?
Well, first off, Greece is 175% debt to GDP. I don't think any of those countries are quite as high, although maybe Spain. But if Greece gets a haircut, if it's considered a haircut, if they call a spade, then the derivatives chain breaks. You have to understand that the Greek bonds are held as collateral at par, even though their interest rates, I think yesterday, the 10-year bonds traded up to 15 or 20%, which means their prices have collapsed. They're still being held on bank balance sheets at level par.
That's a lie.
Of course it is. Now, there's a couple of other things that are interesting from a geopolitical standpoint about Greece. Greece is truly, in my opinion, a pivot point, if you want, between East and West. Greece has already gotten offers from Russia to help them. Another thing that I didn't know about until I didn't put two and two together until yesterday, back in December, Russia announced that the South Stream gas pipeline was canceled and that they were going to build a pipeline through Turkey and end at the Greek border, which means Europe has got to build a pipeline that goes through Greece. Now that's another sticking point because, or you could call it leverage for the Greeks. Are they in? Are they out? Do they have to pay the full amount? How is Europe going to get the Russian gas? Because they're in the process of tightening the supplies through Ukraine because they're being stolen from, and they're not going to build the South Stream pipeline and plan to build a pipeline to the Greek border. How does Europe get their gas? They have to somehow appease Greece.
Well, isn't Greece a NATO country? And
Right.
they're going to take help from Russia. Isn't Turkey a NATO country? And they're going to build a pipeline through Turkey. Doesn't that mean NATO is going to get chipped away, at least at the edges, if not completely blown apart?
Well, the blown apart point is Greece is a NATO country. They also have a vote within NATO, which would be a veto. So if Greece were to turn to Russia, that basically gives Russia a veto on further sanctions. It's really sticky.
Well, they've already basically said to the EU, forget the NATO part of it. They have a vote in the EU, and they went, no, sanctions, no. And they didn't really go ahead with these. I mean, the European Union, or maybe through prodding by the U.S., wanted to add more sanctions on Russia, which I can't fathom in a depression why you would have more sanctions on a country that's a huge trading partner with you. But what do I know? I wonder if and I'm going to switch gears here. Boehner made this deal back in December with his other Congress. And I just wonder, people are like, well, I wonder what's going on. I wonder if Boehner thinks this is all going to blow up. And he knows it's going to blow up. So, yeah, we'll fund Obamacare. Yeah, we'll fund your immigration thing. Yeah, we don't want to do anything that's, sure, here's your budget, $1.1 trillion. Sure, no problem. We're going to get something for our bankers, just in case things blow up. I wonder if he just did this because he knows it's going to blow up, and he doesn't want to be involved in terms of the Republican Party. He doesn't want to be involved in having any blame on him after it blows up. What do you think about that?
Well, blame is going to be everywhere. The numbers that they're coming out with are bogus at this point. They've just reported the budget deficit was 400 and some odd billion, yet funded debt goes up 1.2 trillion. I mean, blame will be everywhere, and everything that we're getting are just bogus numbers.
Yes. When I hear the budget deficit's $400 billion, I just think, come on. I mean, I've had Lawrence Kotlikoff and John Williams on here, and they say, if you take a look at the Treasury numbers, deriving these numbers, it's 5, 6 trillion, 7 trillion. It's 6 trillion in encumberment and debt and commitments. I mean, that's the rate at which per year which we're going at this. It's just bogus. And we're going to we're getting all these these upgrades, and the numbers. I mean, to your point, all the numbers are wrong. Obama asked for a 7% increase, and I wonder if the powers that be just think that's about what the inflation rate is.
They probably know the inflation rate is not saying the inflation is 8%, but even 7%, if the real inflation is 7%, and you got away from growth, 7%, and numbers that they used of 5% growth, or it was less than that, but it shows negative growth. It shows we're still in a recession. We've never come out.
Can we have a war? I mean, we have this. We wrote about the big axis now is China and Russia and Iran. And lots of ugly things could happen with Iran. They could sink a tanker. There's not that the Straits of Hormuz is not that wide. They could sink a tanker or threaten to sink a tanker where no tankers will go through. Basically that would be all they need is just to threaten that any tanker comes through, we're going to sink it. It's only 30 miles wide. It's a chokehold. And so couldn't any one of these. And now Russia is having war games with North Korea. So, I mean, the chessboard is getting pretty heated and pretty ugly and pretty dangerous, is it not?
Well, Russia just flew bombers through the English Channel with the transponders turned off either yesterday or 2 days ago. So, yeah, it's heating up. And historically speaking, if you look at history, trade wars turn into hot wars. It's about business.
Well, Mikhail Gorbachev brought that up. He said that this whole deal is, which is a guy, I don't want to carry, Russia's water. I mean, Russia couldn't have USA Watchdog. If you criticize anything in Russia and you had, Russia Watchdog, you'd be in a gulag somewhere in about 5 minutes. But, Mikhail Gorbachev doesn't come out and, he's not like Donald Trump where he wants to be on all the time. I mean, he came out and was like, whoa, this is going to turn into a hot war. You're in good company there. Do you think that if we do have a war that the whole financial system's gone? Or, and I asked this to Gregory Manarino, do we get a war and a crash in the financial system? Or do we get a crash in the financial system and a war? What do we get? What's the order? What's your order?
It's chicken or the egg question. It doesn't really matter.
We get a war and we get a crash in the financial system. Either way.
More than likely simultaneously. But here's what it's all about, Greg. It's about true and real settlement. The rest of the world is tired of accepting dollars that can be freely printed and not truly be settled on. The Arabs have been sending oil, the Chinese have been sending goods, we've been sending dollars. Those dollars are freely printed. The East, let's call it the BRICS nations, want true and real settlement. And you're talking about 135 to 140 countries all together that want true and real settlement. What that means is on a currency, settlement in a currency that has some sort of real backing. Now, whether that be gold or oil or something else, it has to be something real and something where the yardstick can't get stretched and stretched and stretched. Because think about trade that we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and we paid with dollars. We got stuff and they got dollars, and those dollars don't go as far as they used to.
So do you think when they make I know that Yuan, everybody who watches you and reads this channel knows that the Chinese have set up all these swap facilities all over the world. They've been buying gold at a record pace. Some people say that, I think it was you, one of your columns, twice the stated amount. Is that what your reporting said? Is that you?
That was the World Gold Council came out and said that Cruz Jansen's work is double counting, which I disagree with. If you look just in the last 3 weeks alone, China has imported 200 tons of gold in 3 weeks. That puts them at a run rate of 260 to 270 tons for the month. It puts them well over 3,000 tons for the year. The world only produces 2,400 tons. So they're clearly buying more tonnage than the world is producing. Now, this morning, gold is down $15, $17, and I want to point out that is COMEX driven. We live in a world where a market with 23 tons. It is stated by the exchange that's what they're supposed to have. They're not claiming more, and some people are claiming they don't have that. We'll just leave it at 23 tons. A whopping 23 tons of deliverable gold is what the COMEX has to deliver. That is less than 1/10 of what China is importing in a month.
What's their end game? Why are they so voracious about this? I mean, are they going to back in part their currency, Russia's currency? India is also back to taking the gloves off and importing gold again. Have been doing it for a while. What's the end game? What are we going to see here in the United States?
Well, some people believe that the end game is the IMF's SDR, which will include the yuan, and it'll be a basket of currencies. I believe it end up being two currencies being the SDR and the other being a yuan, maybe ruble, maybe other Asian countries combined with gold backing. The bottom line is the foreigners want a currency they can trust. Gold is the only currency you can trust. So if it's going to be a paper currency, it's got to have some gold backing behind it.
Well, if you do have the SDR, what is it, special drawing rights, is that right? If you do have the SDR, who's going to want that if there's a competing currency backed by gold? I mean, wouldn't you go for the gold?
Yeah, you would think you'd go for the gold, but I'm sure Britain and the United States will go for it. You may have some Latin American countries. You may have Canada. It's hard to say, but that would, over time, in my opinion, that would bleed away and give way to a gold-backed currency.
Well, Canada is a mess up there. I mean, they have gold and they have oil, and the big hit in oil. Now, we had a small rally in oil, but still, it's off 50% anyway. The banks are in trouble. Their oil companies are in trouble. The bonds associated with all that in trouble. Do we make it through 2015 without a major financial collapse? And will that be a daisy chain that does, takes a trip around the world, whether it be Greece or Canada or Spain or whatever?
It doesn't really matter where it starts. It will probably be global within less than 48 hours, say. The reality is probably less than 24 hours, but it will go all the way around the world within 2 days. Because Party A is not paying Party B, he doesn't pay Party C, and round and round we go. The derivatives chain will break. The thing you ask about Canada, yeah, they have gold, but it's in the ground. They've already sold all of their gold, and they announced that, I think, back in 1999. So their treasury doesn't have any gold. And I'd like to get back to the point of true and real settlement. If nations don't settle honestly amongst each other, that's how your trade wars start. That's how one neighbor believes the other neighbor is ripping them off. That's how wars start. And that's what this is about. This is about the rest of the world wanting to trade, wanting to do business mutually, fairly, evenly, and getting paid for the trade. And in the past, with the dollar, the U.S. has gone into many places, done unfair deals, and then, after the deal was even unfair, they paid with dollars, which is an unbacked, it's a freely printed currency. And that's what the world is upset about. That's what this tipping of the balance is about.
And U.S. may and are in the West may end up, or it looks like they're going to start a war to stop it or upset it or retain control. Or
to blame it on. You have to understand, going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, Greece has got to be hidden. Has to be, the fact that they're broke can't come out. If Italy or Spain or anyone else were to default or ask for a haircut or whatever, that would be calling a spade a spade. Once the daisy chain breaks, it will lead all the way throughout all the West, and it will lead to London, and it'll lead to New York, and it will lead to the fact that the gold is gone. That's the great fraud. That's the fraud at the core of all of this. And that's why they're kicking the can and kicking the can, because it can never be discovered that the gold is gone. Once that is discovered, it's over.
And what happens to the U.S. when they finally, I mean, there's going to be a point. You cannot, what does it say, as if, was it Confucius? Somebody says, there's three things you can't hide: the moon, the stars, and the truth.
Right.
And so what happens when America, when the world finds out that we have either we don't have any gold or a lot less gold than what we said, we don't have anywhere near 8.2 thousand tons. What happens to America? What does it look like to the people on the street?
Well, to the rest of the world, it looks like we're fraudsters. So that's first off. Obviously, destroys trade because now nobody wants to do business with us because we're fraudsters. On the street here in the U.S., you're probably going to be looking at total chaos here, and literally will, because all the banks will go. Once the banks go, you're going to look at, especially in the cities, complete chaos, because the average person, I would say, probably has 3 days of food stocked up, 5 days of food stocked up. When the banks go down, distribution will stop. When distribution stops, you just saw it in the Northeast, the stores are wiped out in a day or 2 days. They have just-in-time inventory. It's not like they got loaves of bread sitting in the back ready to be stuffed on the shelves. Once distribution stops, the shelves are not going to be replenished because truckers won't get paid, all the way on down to the farmer. All the middlemen, everything is run on credit, and once credit stops, it's over. And when it's over, you're going to be looking at, what do we have in the country now? 48 or 50 million people on food stamps that just go with a debit card and get food. Those people don't have any food stocked away, so there's an immediate 50 million people that will be out on the streets looking for food. And I do want to point this out too, Greg. If you go back to the 1930s, we see the pictures of bread lines. There are bread lines today. The bread lines of today are the little EBT cards, and there's 50 million of them. So for people who are buying or they hear that all is well go in one ear and it kind of sloshes around a little bit, all is not well. We have 15% of the population that can't even feed themselves.
Another, 13 or 14 million on disability. And so, wow, 93 million out of the workforce no longer counted in the labor participation rate. That doesn't seem like a very strong country. How long will this go on? I mean, they're going to eventually would have to right the ship and have a currency and get things back up. How long should people be prepared to, be on their own? Just your best guess.
I would say probably the absolute minimum would be 3 months.
Whoa!
Yeah, I think 3 months is the absolute minimum. I think it'll take 3 months to get things back to, quote, normal. 6 months is better, a year is better. It's hard to say. You asked me before what my estimate was, whether we get through this year. I have said in the past, it's a coin toss whether we make it through this year or not. I would up that now with what's going on to 60 or 70% chance that we don't make it through the year without a major financial collapse and the jig being up.
See, I think, yeah, I just hit me last night. I was thinking about question to ask you and stuff to throw by you. I think that Boehner thinks that it's going to blow up. So let's make sure we don't get blamed. Let's pass the 1.1 trillion. Let's fund doesn't make any difference. The thing's going to blow up. Let's fund the Obamacare. Let's fund his stupid immigration, his illegal moves. It's not going to make any difference because it's going to blow up anyway. What do you think about that?
It won't make any difference.
That's what I think.
It will not make any difference one way or the other. And it truly was a sellout of the American public, because the American public just voted in November to replace all sorts of Democrats, replace them with Republicans, and then they just go ahead and run this thing through.
Well, he did that with the old Congress. That's why he did it. Yeah, okay. He did it with the old Congress. But still, I mean, the new Congress isn't blazing a trail to do anything.
No, supposedly within the first 5 days or 10 days, they're going to have all sorts of stuff done, and there's nothing but crickets.
Yeah, and I've heard much about this. There's reports that Obama gave work permits to millions of people over this last several years. Millions of people. Americans are out of work. The labor participation rate is, 93 million or so almost. And he's given work permits to people who come here illegally. What?
Well, what did our forefathers say? We would not be invaded by a foreign entity. We would be destroyed within, and that's what's being done internally.
Bill Holter from Miles Franklin, thanks for coming and basically wrapping up some of your most recent papers and giving us an interview and let me pepper you with some questions and some things for you to give a few predictions on. But you think 2015 that your odds are that we don't get through without a war or a financial collapse, or both?
Or both, and I think the probability is well more than a point.
Bill Holter, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg. Enjoyed it.